In April 2026, Viktor Orbán, the most successful far-right leader in 21st century Europe, lost re-election in a landslide. The Prime Minister of Hungary was Donald Trump's closest ally in the European Union, and the father of modern illiberal democracy. His strategy of politicized institutions and media control was copied across Europe and the United States. But Orbán and his party, Fidesz, did not begin that way. In fact, Fidesz was once a key part of the liberal opposition that helped bring democracy to Hungary. So what changed? How did Orbán turn a small centrist student movement into the longest ruling government since the communists? This is the story of how he won, why he kept winning, and how Hungarians finally defeated Viktor Orbán. Fidesz, and Orbán for that matter, have been part of the story of Hungary since before it was even a democracy. The party was originally founded as a liberal, pro-democracy rival to the youth wing of the ruling communists. They were well known for their anti-government student protests, often led by the young law graduate Viktor Orbán, and their activism helped bring about free and fair elections in 1990. But they only won a few seats, and they were pushed into opposition by a right-of-center coalition government. Despite all their energy and visibility, their base of young liberals was just not big enough to make them a major player in Hungarian politics. So Orbán took full control of Fidesz and started to make changes. He transformed them into a center-right Christian Democratic party, causing some liberals to leave, but also expanding their appeal. When economic decline and infighting defeated the ruling right-wing coalition, Fidesz pitched a new alliance with Orbán as leader, untainted by the previous government. By 1997, most of the country's right-wing elites were either allied or absorbed into Fidesz, and the party won its first election in 1998. Orbán continued to shift right in his first term as prime minister, emphasizing nationalist policies and courting far-right voters ahead of the next election. Those efforts, coupled with growing accusations of cronyism, helped cost the government power in 2002 when it lost to a socialist-led center-left coalition. But Fidesz itself actually came out stronger in that election, gaining seats and holding on to an electoral base in rural Hungary. It had evolved from a disorganized student movement into an established party of government, and Viktor Orbán was now a permanent fixture in Hungarian politics. All they needed to do was wait for the socialists to make a mistake. And wow, did they make a mistake. In September 2006, 5 months after he was elected to a second term, a private speech by Socialist Prime Minister Ferenc Gyurcsány was leaked to the public. In it, he declared that his party had failed to keep its promises, made Hungarians worse off, and lied to cover it up. Quote, "We lied in the morning, we lied in the evening, and we lied at night." The socialist popularity plummeted, and the party has never recovered. Fidesz rode a wave of discontent into a massive 2/3 majority in 2010, enough to unilaterally change the constitution. The Hungarian government was now under Viktor Orbán's total control. Over the next 16 years in power, Fidesz moved to the far right, reshaping society and the state along the lines of Christian nationalism. They rewrote the constitution despite opposition boycotts, enshrining nationalist and socially conservative policies. Changes to key areas like taxation and pensions were required to pass with 2/3 majorities, making Fidesz's policies even more difficult to overturn. At the same time, the government increased its influence over the courts and limited their ability to strike down certain laws. And Fidesz-aligned elites took over major media outlets, ensuring favorable coverage and reducing the opposition's ability to reach the people. Those are the key pillars of Orbán's strategy of illiberal democracy, a way to tilt the playing field in his favor without getting rid of free elections. Speaking of which, Fidesz also changed the electoral system, which on its own wasn't really a bad idea. The previous system was this ridiculously complex mixture of runoffs and multi-level proportional representation. It was like an eldritch horror of electoral systems. But the new system heavily favored larger parties and made parliament less proportional. Coupled with Fidesz's media dominance and a fragmented opposition, the new system made sure that Orbán could keep winning supermajorities. Elections may have still been somewhat free, but EU observers argued they were not fair. But even with those advantages, none of it matters if people don't vote for you. Fidesz built its winning coalition starting all the way back in 2010 by combining their rural conservative base with industrial areas that used to vote for the left. That's exactly how right-wing populists have won across Europe, and it's how Trump won in 2016. And just like Trump, Fidesz built that voter coalition by championing nationalist and populist issues and pushing them in the media. Orbán became a vocal opponent to the EU's handling of the Syrian refugee crisis and the war in Ukraine. He also brought the American culture war to Hungary and turned the liberal billionaire George Soros into a sort of foil for his government. All the while, the opposition struggled in the wilderness for over a decade. The traditional parties were too weak to challenge Fidesz individually, and any socialist-led alliances would still be associated with their discredited past governments. Orbán refused to debate opposition leaders, denying them visibility just like the government-backed media. By the 2020s, it was becoming clearer that the established opposition could not defeat Fidesz. Something or someone new was needed, and that challenge would come from the most unlikely place: Fidesz itself. In 2024, Péter Magyar, a Fidesz government official, publicly broke with his party in the midst of a political scandal and called for a new movement to challenge Orbán. Unlike previous opposition alliances, Magyar and his newly adopted party, TISA, were politically center-right, closer to what Fidesz had once been. That made him more palatable to Fidesz voters and allowed him to avoid the baggage associated with the socialist governments. Magyar bypassed the media suppression by building his campaign online and at in-person rallies, mobilizing a new generation of young voters just as Fidesz had with their protests against communist rule. On the other hand, Fidesz's base was aging, and other voters were increasingly alienated by Orbán's stance on Ukraine and Hungary's growing isolation within Europe. TISA led in most independent polls throughout the 2026 election campaign, but the same polls overestimated opposition support in 2022, so people were skeptical that TISA would actually perform as well as predicted, especially in Fidesz's rural heartland. And even if Orbán lost, he could have contested a close result and refused to step down. But in the end, when all the votes were counted, it was pretty impossible to deny the victory. With record turnout, Hungarian voters handed Péter Magyar a 2/3 supermajority, enough to dismantle pretty much all of Orbán's legacy. Rather than suppress their visibility like in the past, Orbán's refusal to face TISA made him lose the argument, and TISA had won enough support to use Fidesz's own electoral system against them. Parts of the illiberal strategy to keep Orbán in power helped to sweep him out. With virtually no other option, Orbán conceded on election night. Just as young Fidesz activists helped bring democracy to Hungary decades ago, a new generation of TISA voters brought an end to Orbán's rule. Magyar has pledged to create a new constitution with broad-based support, and to restore a more cooperative relationship with the European Union. Orbán's defeat is not, by any means, the end of the far-right in Europe. They'll keep getting elected democratically. And Hungary has a long way to go to get to a full, free, and fair democracy. But this year's Hungarian election is proof that autocrats can be overcome, even with the odds stacked in their favor. So, have your say in the comments. What do you think Orbán's defeat means for Hungary, Europe, and the far right around the world? Also, like and subscribe if you found this video interesting or informative. Thanks very much to my YouTube members for your support. It means a lot and it really helps me make these videos a reality. You can become a member if you'd like to support me more and you want maps for the elections I don't make videos about. And if you can, please follow me on Twitter or Blue Sky at the handles in the video or the links in my description. Recently my channel was wrongly terminated for about a month, and I've learned the hard way how difficult it is to get YouTube's attention on this stuff. Having your support has been great, and having your voices elsewhere could be what saves this channel in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.